Hi, I'm Brad Smith, Vice Chair and President of Microsoft, and I'm a guest on, and you're watching Sachin Syal's Ochakde Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Ochakde Show. We're Silicon Valley's first business and self-improvement podcast for teens, hosted by a teen. I'm Sachin Syal. I'm a 17-year-old award-winning entrepreneur and podcaster from the Bay Area, and I interview remarkable and influential entrepreneurs, executives, investors, and inspiring individuals from all walks of life so we can learn from their stories and level up ourselves. I'm also the co-founder and CEO of 3doshas.com. We're a coaching company transforming lives through coaching principles inspired by 3 doshas energies from yoga and Ayurveda. The purpose of this show is to inspire you to go for it, which is what the Punjabi word ochakde means. Today, guys, we have an absolute legend in the tech world. Our very special guest is Brad Smith, an attorney and business executive who's the vice chairman and president of Microsoft. In addition, Brad is also a board member at Netflix. He's the co-author of the book Tools and Weapons and also is the host of the Tools and Weapons podcast. And Brad is an alumni of Princeton University and Columbia Law School. So welcome to the Ochakde Show, Brad. How are you and what's new and exciting?
Well, I'm good. It's great to be here. There is always something new and exciting in the world of technology. That's why I've always loved to be part of it. Right now, what we're really talking so much about is artificial intelligence or AI, where it's going, how it is changing the way people work, how they interact. It takes up a lot of my time, and most of what I work on these days has some connection to it.
Awesome. And I love your setup, by the way. It looks really nice. And where are you? I'm assuming you're in Seattle right now, right?
Yep, I'm just east of Seattle. I'm in Microsoft's headquarters in Redmond, Washington, the suburb of Redmond. And this is what used to be a conference room just down my hall that got converted to this kind of studio during the pandemic.
Well, it looks beautiful. Before we talk about Microsoft, let's go back to when you were a teen, Brad. As stated, I saw on your X and your Instagram profile, you're a proud native of Appleton, Wisconsin. So bring us back to your teen years and what were you passionate about as a teen?
Well, first of all, I'm always grateful for the opportunities I had when I was a teen, especially my years in high school. I had great teachers. My history teacher and my English teacher, I think, were especially impactful on how I thought about and grew in life, as well as many others. And I was passionate then, as I am now, about what's going on in the world. I was active in the school newspaper, in school student government. I did a lot of things after school. I also had some various jobs during my high school years. So I was busy then, and I guess that set a pattern I've continued ever since.
Nice. I love that. And tell us about Appleton, Wisconsin. I've never been there, but why do you love that place so much?
It is a town of about 70,000, or it was 70,000 when I was growing up, about 30 miles from Green Bay. And of course, people who know anything about football know about the Green Bay Packers. It was a great place to grow up, I think in part because it had a great public school system. It had a real community spirit. It created lots of opportunities for me to learn, to get involved. And I think it still has that. I obviously, haven't lived there literally since I graduated from high school because my family moved that year. But I've stayed connected. I've supported a lot of the educational initiatives in the town of or city of Appleton. Supported the building of a new public library. Other things, just in part because I want other folks growing up there to, frankly, just have the same kind of wonderful opportunities that I had.
That's amazing. I love that. Hopefully, I've never been to Wisconsin, but hopefully one day I get to go there.
You should go, whether you
I
like
should go.
football or not. It's a great place to visit.
Sounds good. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, I was going to ask you, what does it mean to be the vice chairman and president of Microsoft, and what are your responsibilities?
In a sense, I wear two different hats, so to speak. There is a part of the company that I directly manage. It has a number of functions. that includes lawyers and government affairs professionals, investigators, the sales organization that supports nonprofits around the world, data science teams, and AI for Good Lab, a lot of different groups. And then I represent the company as a whole, and I'm involved in the company's decision making and really at some level, every aspect of broad business strategy and work with our board of directors. So I get to see everything that happens at the company, and hopefully I add some value to it.
That's so cool. And it's honestly such an honor to have you on my show because, like, you're a top executive at one of the biggest tech companies in the world, and you brought up AI. So I want to ask you about that. Like, how do you envision the future of AI, Brad?
Well, it's a technology that is powerful but still young, is what I would say. And so, if you use something like a Microsoft Copilot, just use it on the web, download it on your phone, or you use ChatGPT, you immediately see that you can do things today that you couldn't do 2 or 3 years ago.
Hmm.
I probably use our Copilot, 25 times a day on average. The person who's my chief of staff tells me she probably uses it 40 to 50 times. I no longer use a search engine. For probably 90% of the questions, I just ask Copilot a question and it gives me a 3-paragraph answer with links.
Yeah.
I use it to write first drafts. I find that if I'm more specific and detailed about what I ask it to do, I get better information. I was meeting with the university president actually 6 days ago.
Oh, nice.
And I said, write a 1,200 word report for me about this person, what he did before he became the president of this university, the accomplishments of which he's most proud, his current priorities as president of the university, and anything he has said or written about technology and technology policy. Give me specific examples and links to any papers he has published. And it took me 60 seconds while it did that work. And I had this wonderful memo that I read, and then I checked out some of the links. And, I probably only spent maybe 10 minutes with it in total, maybe 15. But I had a much greater and more interesting conversation in meeting with him. And I just think it's a great example. It doesn't matter what you're about to do. If there's anything that you might want to learn about before you go do it, this is a new tool for your life.
I agree. I honestly love AI so much because I use it for my podcast. I use it for so many different things. I just think it's fascinating. And I think that, like, the future is here. I mean, there's so many cool things coming out. And then Microsoft collaboration with OpenAI as well. I was super excited when I saw that a while ago. I want to also ask you a question about leadership. I wanted to ask you, what qualities do you think are most important for a leader in the tech industry today, like current day? And how have you cultivated them throughout your career, Brad?
I would say a few things. First, by definition, if you're a leader in the tech sector, you have to have a passion for and even a point of view, a vision, so to speak, about where technology is going and what you want to do to help shape it so it can go there. So I think that is definitely important in tech. But I think beyond that, there's a couple of other things that are important for leadership, regardless of what part of life, any part of life you're in. I think it's really important to have a high sense of integrity. To say what you think, mean what you say, be direct but also kind, and appreciate that there are times when people don't say what they think because they think it's kinder to keep their point of view to themselves, but hiding the ball, that lack of transparency actually is not kind, but
Yeah.
there's lots of ways to be kind. And so it really requires a sense of trying to think about somebody else, where they are, how do you reach that person, how can you be helpful to that person? And I would say think about the shared journey we're all on. We all have an opportunity to learn something new, get a little bit smarter, get a little bit better every day. And whenever you're leading a team, you all really have an opportunity and even a need to learn from each other, build on each other, get better together. And I think it starts with putting yourself in the shoes of serving other people. And even if you're the leader, think about it that way rather than thinking about everybody there to help you. Although it's great, you need their help and you
Yeah.
have the opportunity to call on it as a leader, you should.
Yeah. That's true. And integrity I think that's one of the most valuable traits that a leader can have. So I agree with you on that. You're an attorney. I was going to ask you, like, what inspired you to become an attorney and get a JD from Columbia Law School?
Well, when I was in high school myself, I actually wondered what I would be, thought about different things. And I think I thought I would frankly want to get into politics, wanted to be a politician or maybe a diplomat. And I saw law as something that would be helpful in no matter what I did. Actually ended up enjoying the law more than I probably first expected. But it created a foundation that I've been able to call on to do lots of different things, including give legal advice. And so I got to college. I went from Wisconsin to Princeton, went to the East Coast to New Jersey. And at first I felt like a fish out of water. My freshman year, I was like, what have I done? Why have I moved this far? I don't really know anybody here. They all seem pretty different from me, these fellow students. But I eventually found my footing and made my home there in a community, met the woman who I've been married to for 41 years.
That's
were
always
in the same
awesome.
class. Yeah. And law was a good, logical next step. And I'm very glad I took it. And Columbia was a great place.
Yeah. And you've done a lot of legal stuff for Microsoft too. You were at one point you were the chief legal officer,
Yeah.
and also you're part of CELA. Can you explain what that is? CELA?
Yeah, CELA, as we call it, is Corporate External and Legal Affairs. I rose up through the ranks. I was hired at Microsoft for a legal job, was a lawyer, full-time basically lawyer, and then started to do other things in addition to the legal work. Became the company's general counsel, chief legal officer. That was in 2002. And then in 2015, I was named president of the company. And I still do important work every day where I function as a lawyer. I still give legal advice, but that may be 20% of my day in many days. So I'm very happy that I can bring that skill set and that ability, quote, to think like a lawyer to a problem. Some problems are legal problems, but even those that are not, they benefit from an analytical rigor. And what I have found over the years is the logical reasoning that is important to be a computer scientist and write code has a certain similarity to the logical reasoning in being a lawyer. And so it's really helped me in many ways I would have never anticipated.
So can you explain how you said that you think a computer scientist is similar to a lawyer? Can you explain that a little more?
Well, computer programs work with a certain logic. There's a routine that is created when you write a program. There are routines, there are subroutines. If you take almost any engineering problem, whether it's in computer science or electrical engineering or mechanical engineering or chemical engineering, you need to be able to think analytically. And by that, I mean, you need to look at a situation, you need to, in many instances, understand what's the problem we're trying to solve here. Look at the data that helps you explain and analyze the problem. You need to develop a solution and conceptualize, and then ultimately, typically, especially in the world of engineering, measurably, assess whether your solution is solving the problem. That is analytical reasoning. And the analytical reasoning in law is a little bit different, but there's enough similarities that I've often found that when you get engineers and lawyers in the same room, there's a lot of ways in which they think the same way.
That's a really cool way I think I've never heard about that, and I do agree with you on that. I want to talk about Netflix. You're a board member at Netflix. What is your responsibility as that, and like why did you choose to do that? Do you like it, and how's it like?
Oh yeah, I've loved doing it. I've been on the board of Netflix now for just more than 9 years.
Nice.
The thing to know is like every public company in the United States, as well as private companies for that matter, they have a board of directors.
Mhm.
The board of directors is not responsible for managing the company. That's really the CEO, it's the senior management team. But in the world of companies, the board of directors is responsible for governing the company. What does that really mean? Well, you can think about it this way. The board is responsible for hiring or firing a CEO. It's responsible for ensuring that the company is run in accordance with financial rules, legal standards. It's responsible for setting the compensation, the pay of the CEO and typically the most senior people who work at the company. It plays an important role in ensuring the company lives up to the needs of its customers, reputationally, that it's thinking broadly. And then there's a line between governance and management. A board can overfunction and get too deep, in which case it's not productive, but it needs to be connected and informed and understand the strategy and how the company is doing. Reed Hastings is the chairman of Netflix. Yeah. He's the founder of it. Reed was on the Microsoft board. So I got to know him when he was on the Microsoft board. And about a year after he left the Microsoft board, he asked me whether I would be interested in joining the Netflix board. And that kicked off a process where ultimately I was invited to join and obviously said yes.
That's so cool. I mean, how do you manage to do everything like Microsoft and Netflix? Like, how do you manage your time?
I will admit I work long hours.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no substitute, for working long hours when you have a lot to get done. You find the right balance. And today my two children are both 32 and 29, and it's not like when they were 13 and 9 or 12 and 9. So over time I've adjusted my schedule in different ways. I get up early, get in the office early, usually have some time in the morning before, frankly, most other people get in, and I'm able to read things to get ready for the day, catch up on email. My days are full of meetings when I'm in Redmond and full of travel a large percentage of the time. And so then you have to find ways to both make time to think, to write, to learn, and for yourself and your family, my wife. And so we have, time on the weekends or evenings and, do that too. That is obviously critical. But let me just say, I work longer hours than your average person.
That's pretty obvious. Yeah. Now let's get into some of the fun questions, okay? So you joined Microsoft in 1993. If you could describe your journey so far at Microsoft in one word, what word would it be and why?
Adventurous. It's
Nice.
been a constant adventure. I actually joined Microsoft, leaving my law firm on what I fully expected was going to be a 2-year leave of absence. So I really thought I would go back to the firm in 1995. And I found it so interesting, so fascinating, technology changing so rapidly. This was just, when the internet was starting to explode. Love the people I worked with. I still got to work with some of the folks at my old law firm. They were doing work for us that I obviously have long overstayed my 2-year leave of absence. There came a point when we all decided, I don't think I'm ever going back. So this is no longer a leave of absence. Every year has been different from the year before. The job has constantly changed.
Awesome. And then you've been at Microsoft for 31 years. What do you think has been the most exciting moment ever for you? And is like something you'll never forget?
It's a great question because there have been so many moments. I'll offer a couple. I mean, one was this moment when Satya Nadella became our CEO in 2014. Steve Ballmer stepped down as our CEO. I had been the longest serving direct report to Steve, and I had worked and continued to work with Bill Gates as well. It was an extraordinary moment because I felt like we were going from one chapter to the next. And I had so enjoyed and still enjoy Steve. He was such an extraordinary leader and still is. You see this now. If anybody's watching what's in the news in Los Angeles as their new arena has opened for the Los Angeles Clippers, and
Yeah.
all the energy and vision he's brought to that. And at the same time, having worked with Satya for a few years, even before he became CEO, as colleagues on the senior leadership team, I was so excited about the future that it held as well. And so, to be involved in that changing of the guard, one chapter to the next, that was an extraordinary moment. The other thing I'll just point to, because it's a very different kind of moment, and yet in some ways it's similar at one level as well. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to be back in Paris, France. That's where my first job was with Microsoft. I started in Paris because we had been living in London, and I spent my first 3 years there. And for the first time in the history of Microsoft, our 40 years in France, the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, at that time, still is the president, he came to Microsoft. And we announced together this large investment, multi-billion-dollar investment that Microsoft is making in France. And there's almost this iconic photo of the two of us together on stage shaking hands.
I gotta find that.
And it was a wonderful moment. And I shared the story, it was to not just the cameras that were there, but to our employees who were there. It meant a lot to me because I had started in Paris. Our daughter had been born when we lived in Paris. She was born very prematurely, and it was the French hospital system that kept her alive. And so I said, wow, this, France had given us our daughter. And now we were back, and I was there as Microsoft was making this commitment to an investment in France. And it was a little bit of a circle closing that was pretty magical.
What do you have to search up to find that picture? Probably just your name or that person's name, and I'll find that picture.
We will help you, but I think if you go to do a search or go to Copilot and look for bradsmith, the Microsoft, and President Macron of France, and Microsoft's investment in France, there's a pretty good chance it'll come up.
Nice. I'll definitely look at that. So Brad, you're also a co-author of a book, and you're also a podcaster. I love that. Tell us about Tools and Weapons, both the book and the podcast, and why is it called Tools and Weapons?
We wrote a book I did with Carol Ann Brown, who's my chief of staff, and we entitled it Tools and Weapons because it's about, as we said in the subtitle, the promise and the peril of the digital age. Every technology over time is typically turned into both a tool and a weapon. Mm-hmm. The more powerful the tool, the more formidable the weapon. So we looked at digital technology and all the ways in which it is both a tool and a weapon, and it needs to be managed that way. So that's why we wrote the book. The first edition came out in 2019. We updated it in 2021. And then it was really Carol Ann's idea to say, let's do a podcast where we bring on other guests that in some way, shape, or form speak to either the tool or the weaponization of technology, or both, and use these conversations to draw people out. I will admit, I had very mixed feelings about doing it, mostly because it was so far outside my comfort zone. It was like, look, I know how to answer people's questions, but I don't think I'm necessarily very good at asking questions or being an interviewer. And she pushed me. She said, you can do this. And there's a small team that helps. And sure enough, I get through every one of them. And, they do get edited a bit. And it's amazing how a good editor can make somebody look better. So I've managed well. And we've had some wonderful people on it, including just recently a woman named Maria Ressa, who won the Nobel Peace Prize a couple of years ago. So it was a lot of fun to connect with her.
Nice. Yeah, I love podcasters. I love you more now that you're a podcaster too. Okay, this is an interesting question. Like, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I really think it's to do your best work on everything you do. It's really can be tempting to say, this is boring, this doesn't matter, it's not as important as something else. Now, when I was in college, I had the chance to take some classes pass-fail. So that was the exception. I will still remember the art history course I took at Princeton, pass fail. A 60 was a pass, a 59 was a fail, and when I picked up my exam, the professor wrote on 61 and wrote the word gift. So that's called just barely passing. But, I've learned over the years, whenever you do something well, it probably creates an opportunity for somebody to ask you to do something more. Work goes to people who do it well. So just remember that. And even if it's boring, find a way to make it fun, grind through it, do a good job. You're going to learn more. And there's a sense of accomplishment, I think, that always comes out of knowing you did something well. So to me, it's been great advice.
I agree. And I do that with my podcast too. I try my best. And I mean, the fact that I got you on it, I was so excited for this interview, Brad. I appreciate it. As we wrap up here, these are the last two questions that I asked all my guests.
Yeah.
The first one is, what's your all-time best advice for teens?
Take the long view. There really are not shortcuts. And by that, I mean, if there's a right way to do something, try to do it the right way. Reach high, have high ambition. And at the same time, know that for most folks, Rome is not built in a day.
Yeah.
But if you can take a step forward every day, have confidence in yourself, invest in your relationships with your family and friends, treat other people the way you want them to treat you. People remember that. It really is the case that most of the time people won't remember what you say, but they will remember how you make them feel.
Yeah.
And so, think about how you want to feel, help other people feel that way too.
Awesome. I love that advice. Okay, last question of the day is, what was your favorite part of being a guest on the Ochakde show?
Well, for me, it's always an opportunity to connect with people who are doing interesting things, but are a little bit different from me. I mean, if you just spend your time with people who are like you, you don't really learn that much. So it's a great opportunity. I've enjoyed being on this. It's great to listen to your questions. It reminds me of what I was thinking about when I was a teen, especially in my high school years. They're fun years, hopefully, for people. Mm-hmm. They're great years, but you've got a lot ahead of you. And I appreciate your asking me to be on. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. So thank you.
Of course, guys, that was Brad Smith, Vice Chairman and President of Microsoft and Netflix board member. Thank you so much, guys, for watching the episode. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.